Hi, I'm Sandy Goldberg from Antenna Audio. Welcome to the podcast series from Emory University's Carlos Museum. This time, the conversation was sparked by a question I had when I was walking through the museum's galleries of ancient American art. About the number of jaguars I saw there. They were on bowls, on large vessels, on statuettes, and some of them looked sort of half jaguar and half human. Now, on the labels, they're identified as representations of shamans. And so my question was, why this association between shamans and jaguars specifically? To talk about this, I'm joined by Rebecca Stone, curator of ancient American art at the Carlos Museum, and a jaguar expert, John Polisar. He's the coordinator of the Jaguar Conservation Program for the Wildlife Conservation Society. So thank you, Rebecca and John, for joining me today. Let's start off with how we know that in the ancient Americas there was an association between jaguars and shamans.
Well, one of the most important clues is linguistic. In the Maya languages, the word for shaman is balam, and the word for jaguar is also balam. There's no distinction made between the two. I think in shamanism, because of the experience during visions, that you have transformed yourself into that cat, then the word suffices for both aspects of your being.
And geographically, how far did this relationship between jaguars and shamans extend?
I think from Mexico southward, certainly, there's a very strong association that the top shamans, the most important shamans, would have the jaguar as their animal self.
So in the ancient world, were jaguars seen all the way through the areas that Rebecca was just talking about?
Well, the historic range of the jaguar is essentially from the southwest of the United States, Mexico, going down through Central America, right down through Panama, and into South America, usually not at really, really high elevations. So probably in the ancient art and ancient world, when you had some of the civilizations that occupied the Altiplano, probably the symbolism and the connection wouldn't be as strong. But in the lowlands, both the jaguar and the people are occupying the same areas and probably a lot of times using some of the same prey items.
And were they both sort of on the top of the food chain wherever they lived? Because nothing really hunted the jaguar except for people. Or people didn't hunt jaguars, did they?
Probably in some places, actually they did for cultural reasons. I think generally not for food reasons. In most of its range, it is the king. And humans, by stint of tools and strategy, become a top predator, but probably also recognize that they don't have the innate capabilities that the jaguar had to take that prey with its body. And I think that would probably stimulate respect on their part.
And would the jaguars, like tigers and lions, would they occasionally hunt people for food?
Generally, jaguars don't do that. You don't have man-eating jaguars to become problems like you've had in the old world with any of those cats.
Now, would ancient people have seen jaguars around?
Jaguars are difficult to see in the wild. What's more common for people to see is a sign of the jaguar, and that's fairly easy to see. The tracks are very conspicuous, very rounded toes, rounded foot pad.
So would you say that maybe there was this association, too, with the shamans because it was kind of difficult to see the jaguar, so there was a sense that there's this mystery or secretness about them?
Yes, I think that's very true. I think glimpsing one in a tree, seeing some spots go by that are camouflaged, this elusiveness of the animal, knowing it's there but not being able to see it, is in itself very shamanic, because the shamanic experience of visions, which is at the core of what the shaman does to transcend everyday reality, those are only visible to the shaman themselves. They're not usually a huge performance. So the shaman is a solitary individual like a jaguar. So I think this hidden, elusive nature is one of the fundamental characteristics that the two share.
So if these animals were really so elusive, when could ancient Americans have encountered jaguars?
They're probably most active in the early dawn as the darkness breaks into the day and as the day turns into the night. Dawn, dusk, But to a certain degree, there's a possibility of seeing a jaguar any time of the day, except frequently people are really not active walking around at night.
Well, but a shaman may be the one who is active in the middle of the night. Shamanic rituals go all night long. So I think they would even maximize the time. They may be transformed internally into a jaguar and actually have more chance of interacting with a real jaguar at that time. There's often a belief still today that when people see a jaguar, they are seeing a transformed shaman. In fact, we have a beautiful piece in the Carlos Museum that's from the Maya culture, from the early classic period, around 250 in the Common Era. And it shows on the lid a dual being, which has a jaguar sitting in a human position on one side, joined, actually fused to a human figure, which is actually the figure of the sun god. And they're back to back, but their heads are joined together. And the sun god that's being depicted is an elderly god with no teeth. And this represents the god of the sun at twilight, specifically. And the jaguar that he is attached to represents the sun at midnight. So that this piece is showing the transition from twilight into nighttime, and I think highlights the more important time of the day when jaguars are out. And also I think what's important is that this would be the time of the day when jaguars would be dominant over humans. We don't see as well as jaguars. They see 5 times better than we do in low light. So that's their time of day.
Now, I heard you say that something about a jaguar being seen in a tree. Now, I didn't know jaguars climb trees. I think of them as big, heavy animals. What else could they climb trees, and where else could they go?
Jaguars can climb. They are versatile. They're very comfortable in water. I once saw a situation where a large jaguar had attacked a young cow that weighed probably at least twice its weight, drug it through a little bit of forest, and then basically swam across a 20-meter river and then dragged it further into the forest. And it gives an idea of the strength of the animal. It's really about the same size as a lot of grown men, but several times stronger, easily.
And I think how this would relate to shamans is that shamans are felt to have full access to all the realms of the cosmos, because during their visions they feel they can fly, they feel they actually can go underground. And so an animal that has the potential to go up, down, and in water would also be another one of these congruences between the human shaman in their animal self and the actual animal in nature.
Now, you mentioned that ancient people would have seen footprints more often, and how else would they have experienced? I'm trying to imagine, even if they didn't see them around, how they would have felt their presence.
Tracks, scrapes. People would have heard jaguars calling. It's kind of a hoarse coughing sound, or even a snoring sound.
We have a piece in the collection that has rattle balls, fired clay balls that were put inside the hollow portions of the mouth and the legs of the effigy.
Just a moment. Here's the sound it makes. Listen.